But one of the most important electronic contacts between Orient and Occident came in the early hours of May 3rd.
The government of the Democratic Republic of Vietnam is of the view that the former talks between Hanoi and Washington should be held immediately. The Democratic Republic of Vietnam welcomes the French government's willingness to offer Paris as a site for the talks between Hanoi's representatives and the United States.
The signals of Radio Hanoi broadcasting a note of hope. The North Vietnamese government at last was ready to enter into formal talks about the prospects of peace. At the White House, President Johnson worked through the pre-dawn hours that Friday in order to deliver his carefully phrased response.
I was informed about 1 o'clock this morning that Hanoi was prepared to meet in Paris on May the 10th or several days thereafter. After conferring with the Secretary of State of Defense, Mr. Goldberg and Ball, Secretary Harriman, Mr. Vance, I have sent a message informing Hanoi that the date of May the 10th and the site, Paris, are acceptable to the United States.
The diplomatic deadlock over a site for the peace talks was finally broken. The North Vietnamese had revealed a willingness to talk, but only on their terms and at places where all the advantages would be theirs, such as Warsaw, Phnom Penh, or Burma. But the president, who had already offered at least 15 locations, had stood firm for a conference site that would be acceptable to both sides. And the American negotiators Averell Harriman and Cyrus Vance would face a communist delegation headed by Xuan Thuy in the French capital. But the war did not end with the start of talks at the Avenue Kléber. Clark Clifford, Secretary of Defense, CIA Director Richard Helms, General McConnell from the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Walt Rostow, the President's Special Assistant. These were some of the security advisors who worked with the President in meeting the enemy's newest combat challenge, Red for Blood in May. It was Hanoi's jungle passport, a promise of new bloodshed and terror. It was a communist version of the old Prussian dictum of von Clausewitz. War is a continuation of diplomacy by other means. During May, American special detection equipment, including starlight scopes, revealed that record numbers of North Vietnamese soldiers were infiltrating into South Vietnam. 30,000 communist troops a month on their way south to celebrate the 78th birthday of Ho Chi Minh by launching rocket and terror attacks on such cities as Pleiku, Can Tho, Da Nang, Saigon, and other southern cities. 4 more weeks of death and destruction to innocent civilians and over 100,000 new refugees. The communists paid dearly for their desperation tactics, losing almost 5,000 men a week. For the Allies, it was also costly, especially the Americans, who lost 562 men one week, 549 the next. May was the bloodiest month of the war. And although the Paris talks held a faint promise of peace, the president grieved over the fact that by Memorial Day 1968, over 20,000 Americans and 23 times that many Vietnamese soldiers had fallen in these 3 years of struggle along the frontiers of freedom.
The battlefield is the scarred and the lonely landscape of man's greatest failure. But it is a place where heroes walk. There will come a day when the last American soldier will have stacked arms in Vietnam. Quan Dao Ting and 100 other places which once were battlefields will echo to an ancient roll call. The roster of brave men like these who stood and who fought